looking, throwing in the end zone.
Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today we're going to be discussing the 49ers' resounding 42-10 win over the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night. We're going to give stats for the game, thoughts, discuss how the 49ers shut down the Dallas Cowboys offense and how the Cowboys D could not hang with the 49ers offense. Any Brock Purdy doubters out there anymore? There better not be, but we're going to discuss it. We're also going to discuss what I loved to see during the game and what this victory over Dallas actually means. In the plus section, we're going to talk solely more football, starting off with college football, how dumb the University of Miami coaching staff, players, and specifically head coach are. And we're going to take a spin around the league, brief discussions on every game. But like always, it starts with the 49ers, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners.
So I was wrong. If you listened to the last podcast, I predicted the 49ers would lose to Dallas 23-20. I'm going to go over the whys later. Mark it down. I was wrong the first time ever in my life, and my wife can verify that for you. But let's go through the stats. Total yardage, everything dominated by San Francisco. If you watch the game, you know it, but let's put numbers behind it. Total yards, 421 to 197. First downs, 25-8. Time of possession, plus 14 minutes. Turnovers, 4 for the Cowboys, 1 for San Francisco. Quarterbacking, Brock Purdy, 17 of 24, 252 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was sacked 1 time. Dak Prescott, 14 of 24, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and sacked 3 times. Running, Jordan Mason taking the lead, at least for yardage, 10 rushes for 69 yards and 1 touchdown. Christian McCaffrey, 19 rushes for 51 yards and 1 touchdown. Deebo Samuel, 5 for 30, and as a team, the 49ers ran 41 times for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hell, even Ty Davis-Price had a couple carries. For the Cowboys, Tony Pollard, 8 for 29 yards. As a team, 19 for 57 yards. Receiving, George Kittle, day before his birthday, 3 for 67 and 3 touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk, 4 for 58. Deebo Samuel, 3 for 55. For the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, 4 for 49. Tony Pollard, 4 for 35. And tight end Jake Ferguson, 3 for 28. 49ers sacks, Warner and Greenlaw at the linebacker position each had 1. Kevin Givens had 1. And Bosa and Armstead a half each. So and interceptions, Fred Warner, Tayshaun Gibson, and Oren Burks. Not necessarily in that order. Gibson had the first, then Warner, then Burks. So one other note before we get into the game. Earlier this week, the 49ers traded with the Denver Broncos for outside linebacker, who's essentially going to be a defensive end on the Niners, Randy Gregory. In a corresponding move, they had to release defensive end Kerry Hyder. Now, if Randy Gregory is going to be a step up from Hyder, is going to be a to be determined. He's younger. 2 years younger than Hyder, but in 6 NFL seasons, Gregory only has 19.5 sacks. He was owed $14 million by the Broncos this year, and as part of the trade, the 49ers are going to pick up only $840,000 for this year, counting against the cap. The next 2 years, Randy Gregory's cap charge is $14 million each season, but there is no guaranteed money left, meaning they can release him and owe him nothing, or if he works out, they rework that contract because as a rotational D end, or even as a number 2 D end, which I doubt he's going to be on this team, he is not worth you can't make $14 million a year and have 16 sacks in your 19.5 sacks in your career. Does not compute. Good job, Broncos. The 49ers basically swap draft picks. So the 49ers gave up their 6th round pick for the Broncos' 7th round pick, in addition to getting Randy Gregory. And the way that this is looking, hopefully it's a late 6th round pick for the 49ers and an early 7th round pick for the Broncos, which the Niners will be getting that early 7th. At the end of the day, it might be a pick that's separated by, 6 to 9 picks. So I don't think the Broncos really wanted to get rid of Randy Gregory. If he can help out and provide a little bit more juice for the pass rush, awesome. Let's get back to the game, and let's get back to me being wrong. As I said in the jump, I said 23-20 Dallas. Why? 4 reasons. I thought Mike McCarthy, head coach and play caller, would provide balance and thereby limit Dak's mistakes. Well, they did run it 19 times, but only for 57 yards, so that's 3 yards a carry, and Dak was over 50%, 14 of 24, only 154 yards, but he did throw 3 interceptions, so that's wrong. I thought Dallas's defense would be a force. Now, Stephon Gilmore is the only good cornerback they have left. They lost Trayvon Diggs. Actually, Deron Bland has a couple interceptions and I think maybe 1 or 2 pick sixes against, crap teams that they've played. But I thought that front 4, that pass rush, Micah Parsons in total, you have a good pass rush, makes things uncomfortable for the quarterback, helps your secondary on the back end, tip passes, interceptions, something. Did not happen. Brock was sacked once, and it came on the first quarter or first half. It was Jaron Kearse on a safety blitz with Brock more or less rolling to his left, and was able to step up in the pocket a little bit before getting tackled. It wound up being, I think, only a 2 or 3 yard loss. But the Dallas Cowboys defense was not at all a force. Reason number 3, on paper, right? You could say that Dallas has comparable skill position players to the 49ers to score points. Am I saying that that I would trade McCaffrey and Kittle and Ayuk and Debo and Juwan Jennings and I'm sure I said McCaffrey already, and Purdy for Dak and Pollard and Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Michael Gallup? No, but those aren't slouches. They were what, a top 3, top 5 point scoring offense going into that game. And we're going to get into who they played, which was, I think, a big reason why this was such a big step up in competition for them. They weren't ready. But if you can't get up for this game, Dallas, losing the last 2 matchups of the 49ers in the playoffs, 1 at home, 1 on the road, nationally televised, much like this game was, then who are you going to get up for? Just division rivals? They have the skill players. It comes down to the trigger man, and Dak was not up to the challenge yet again. And lastly, I didn't want to overstate the heart component, or maybe heart's the wrong word. Well, there's no other organ that really equates to what I'm going to say, but I thought Dallas needed this game more. I thought Dallas wanted this game more. I thought Dallas was the team that had this circled on the calendar. After the last 2 games, Dak Prescott specifically, how he's played against the 49ers the last 2 games, threw 3 interceptions in the last 2 games combined, threw 3 interceptions last night against San Francisco. I still believe the Cowboys were the team that wanted it more, that in a way had more to prove, and they wanted to show the country what they can do, at least for one night, and that's all it was. 1 game, 1 night. At least for 1 night, the 49ers proved that the Cowboys are not in their league, right? 32-point loss, dominated in every facet of the game. Dallas did not have a chance really at all. Now, let's start out just a couple, discussing some drives. Another great opening drive by San Francisco. They've scored on all opening drives of all 5 games. This one went 8 plays, 75 yards in 3 minutes and 50 seconds, a 19-yard touchdown to Kittle. So Shanahan, much like many offensive coordinators, especially with a West Coast background, scripting up those plays to get his team in the end zone to take the early 7-0 lead. After teams traded 2 punts apiece, The 49ers get a fumble on that wild sideline play where the ball is punched out of Tony Pollard's hand. There's 2 or 3 49ers tackling him or around the ball. The ball bounces around their legs, stays in bounds, and is recovered by Kevin Givens. Very fortunate play for the 49ers, but then I guess the football gods thought, all right, let's roll with some karma, because as the Niners were driving and Christian McCaffrey steamrolled, I think it was Jaron Kerskin or someone at the 2-yard line. He had the ball ripped from him as he was rolling over. Dallas took over at the 1. Couldn't do anything with it. Had to punt. And then for the San Francisco scores a touchdown to go up 14-0. Dallas does score one on a nice throw by Dak Prescott to Turpin, their wide receiver kick returner who hurt his ankle, could not play in the second half. And the 49ers get another touchdown to go up 21-7 at the end of the half. So the 49ers points-wise balanced. 21 in the first half, 21 in the second half. The defense clamped down 7 points in the first half, 3 in the second half. Now let's talk about Dallas's first half possessions. Slow start. You can't do that on the road. You can't do that as an underdog. You can't do that against a team that, while you may have comparable talent to, San Francisco still is the more talented team. But in the first half, Dallas went 3 plays and a punt, 3 plays and a yard and a punt, both 1 yard, first two drives, a fumble, 3 plays, 2 yards and a punt. Then their touchdown drive, 11 plays, 78 yards and a touchdown. Then to conclude with 3 plays, 8 yards and a punt. So 1, 2, 3, 4 3-and-outs, 1 fumble and 1 touchdown. Not going to cut it. And if you thought that was bad, here comes the second. So let's stay in the first half, right? So the way the Niners gave up that long end of the half touchdown to the Steelers in opening day, and then giving up multiple long drives to the Cardinals to keep the game 21-7 at the half, to me was big. Dallas was getting the ball. 21-10 wouldn't have been terrible because it would have been still a 2-score game. 21-7's better. 2 scores and 14 points. You certainly didn't want to go in 21-14. And when Shanahan got the ball back with not that much time left, I was watching with my older son saying, all right, now let's see if Shanahan's going to be reckless or careless. I'm sorry, aggressive or reckless, because you don't want to give the Cowboys the ball back with a lot of time. Instead, they march down the field on a touchdown drive and do give it back to Dallas, but I think it was around 2.5 minutes to go, and Dallas couldn't do anything with it. But Dallas does get the ball, goes 6 plays, 39 yards for a field goal, 21-10. So still feel good, right? Dallas hasn't shown much in the first half. Second half, though, pretty decent drive, gets into field goal range, connects on, I think it was like a 52-yarder, but still a 2-score game, 21-10. Then here's how Dallas went. Interception, 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 6 plays for 11 yards, and punt. Niners clamped down. The Cowboys had 0 plays all game in the 49ers red zone. The touchdown to Turpin was it like a 35, 40-yard touchdown? I don't remember specifically. Nice throw by Dak, but beyond the 20-yard line. San Francisco kept them outside of the 20, got 4 turnovers, a fumble, and 3 interceptions. And Steve Wilks dialed up a phenomenal, whatever the game plan was, whatever they want. He did bring some pressure, not a lot. 4-man lines were getting there at times, but you could tell Dak was uncomfortable. Charvarius Ward playing good boundary defense at corner. Isaiah Oliver covering CeeDee Lamb pretty well. You heard Chris Collinsworth have a statement about that, especially when lined up in the slot. Now, Oliver was on the coverage against Turpin when Turpin caught the touchdown. Oliver can't run with Turpin. There's no one on the 49ers team that could run with Turpin. So, in a way, I want to either give him a pass or I don't know if he should have played off him a little bit more. Listen, this is the NFL. touchdowns are going to happen, right? We're not thinking about shutting out Dallas. No one thought a 32-point win. No one thought the Niners were going to score 42. Maybe you thought some people like, oh, Dallas is only going to score 10. They've only scored 17 and 12 against the 49ers in the other two games, so maybe 10 is on the table, but certainly not 42 and a 32-point victory. But Steve Wilks, and this was the worry, right, that I said last podcast, and I'm sure other 49er fans had. It seemed like his defense was bend, don't break. It seemed like playing soft umbrella coverages in the secondary was allowing quarterbacks to get a quick, 3-step drop, get the ball out, mitigate the pass rush, and take what the 49ers are giving them. Dallas had that opportunity. The 49ers and Steve Wilks were challenging the Cowboys at times, having their corners play up, playing press man, showing blitz, dropping out behind it. Diamador Lenore playing tight on, I don't know if it was Lamb or Cook or Gallup, tipping the ball away. Fred Warner getting the interception. Late in the game, I guess in the fourth quarter, Oren Burks read the slant that Dak wanted to throw, cut right in front of the receiver, had a nice pick, ended up on the ground, picked up close to 10 yards afterwards. And Tayshaun Gibson, Dak took a shot downfield, overthrew his receiver by 3 to 5 yards. Gibson caught it. Nice return down the right sideline. Dallas was not going to beat the 49ers once San Fran got ahead by dinking and dunking, by being Brock Purdy, air quotes, even though I don't believe that at all, that's what Brock Purdy is. They had to take shots. They took one against Ward down the sideline, did not complete. They took one to Turpin for a touchdown, and then the pick that Tayshaun Gibson had. But what's most important about getting for San Francisco, how they blew the doors open when it was 21-10, is after the Cowboys kicked a field goal to make it 21-10, San Francisco responded with a touchdown. Then the Cowboys got the ball. Niners picked them off. Then San Francisco scores a touchdown. Cowboys get the ball again. Niners pick them off. San Francisco scores a touchdown. Cowboys get the ball again. Niners pick them off. And by that point, the scoring was over. It was 42-10. So listen, great game. I want to get into kind of some stats overall, what the teams were coming in. Nobody saw this manhandling coming. The most optimistic of 49er fans, and I guess I was not one of them, predicting a loss. The matchup scares me. Dallas on paper, I think, scares a lot of people. On paper. But the game's not played on paper. The game's not played in Madden. The game's not played touch football on my street. It's played in an actual stadium with these actual players, and Shanahan, I think we could say, is a better play caller than McCarthy, and he has obviously more talent to work with, and right now, the better quarterback to work with, right? And you heard Chris Collinsworth, if you're watching the game, saying they're still in the infancy stages, the Cowboys are, of this Texas Coast offense, which is Mike McCarthy running a West Coast offense for the Cowboys, and that they haven't installed their 7-step drops and passes yet. Isn't that what training camp is for? Isn't that what the preseason's for? Isn't that what the first 4 weeks of the season's for? You're telling me that you don't have your full offense, or let's say, I don't know, the last 20% of your offense installed yet? What's taking so long? Is Mike McCarthy's offense that complex that we are spoon feeding it to your supposedly intelligent quarterback? And I'm sure, and Dak, I don't want to say it because Dak comes across as a really good guy, and I'm sure a really smart guy and smart football player. But you've had since July, guys, to install the entirety of your playbook, and you haven't? And I'm sure there's maybe some things that Shanahan or other offensive coordinators are maybe still installing, because it's, again, you're only 4 or 5 weeks into the season. But to not have your 7-step drops in there yet, and there was no reason for Dak to take a 7-step drop against San Francisco, not with the pass rush the 49ers could employ at times. But boy, my ears perked up when I heard that. That was just, to me, very surprising. Let's rewind to these teams coming into the game. Let's start with Dallas. Dallas came in as the number 2 overall defense. The 49ers put 421 yards up on them. The number 2 pass defense, giving up 148 yards a game. The Niners put up 252. The number 16 run defense, we talked about how this could be an area that the Niners could exploit, giving up 112 rushing yards a game. Niners ran for 170. And the number 1 team in points allowed, averaging 10.3 points per game. San Francisco had 21 at the half, 42 for the game. Who did Dallas play? Let's just go over it. And this is why it was smoke and mirrors now that we look at it. And again, the Niners, I'm just kind of bring myself down from a fan to let's just look at things maybe a little bit logically. Niners are looking good, 5-0. 5 straight games of 30 points, right? Are they as good as they showed against Dallas? Probably not. Some teams could just have a really good game. That might be their outlier game all season for points, right? 42? It could. Do I think Dallas is as bad as they showed? No. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. Always somewhere in the gray areas. But the Cowboys did play the Giants, shut them out. They are terrible at 1-4. Played the Jets in Zach Wilson's first start, non-functional. They're 2-3. Played the Cardinals, lost to them 28-16, I believe. Cardinals are 1-4. And beat up on the Patriots last week, 38-3, and everybody's chest pounding. Patriots, Cowboys at home. Big time slugfest coming with the 49ers. Patriots are 1-4. They're trash. They lost 34-0 at home against the Saints, and Mac Jones was benched for the second consecutive game. So this does lead to the question of how good is Dallas? And Micah Parsons came out and said, I don't think the score indicates we have the same kind of talent as they do, and I think we're the same caliber team. And he might be right. It's not like the Cowboys are a talentless team. Listen, the Niners did not beat anyone all year the way they beat Dallas, but Dallas is a better team than the Giants, than the Rams, than the Cardinals, and the Steelers. So again, that whole transitive property, A is greater than B and B is greater than C, so A is greater than C, doesn't apply here. Sometimes teams are just a bad matchup. It does not mean Dallas is not that talented team. They have a top 5 roster. They ran into a buzzsaw last night. And one of the players that we all thought was going to be a factor, Micah Parsons, total non-factor, 4 total tackles, 1 solo tackle, no sacks. The only sack, as I mentioned earlier, came from safety Jaron Kearse in the first quarter. Now let's look at San Francisco coming into the game. Defense, number 5 overall, allowed 197 total yards to the Cowboys. The number 17 pass defense, and that had me worried too, right? The way they're playing soft, 218 yards they're averaging a game. Here comes Dak and company with the weapons he has. They allowed 218 on average. They let up 154 against the Cowboys. Number 3 in rush defense, giving up 66 yards a game, allowed 57 to Dallas. And number 3 in points allowed, 14.5 per game, allowed 10 to Dallas. Played the Cowboys, a very good team. They're not crap. Dallas is a very good team. Niners had a really good night. The Cowboys didn't. They held the Cowboys under the 49ers defensive averages in all of these 4 metrics. Kudos to Steve Wilkes. Kudos to the 49ers players. They were up for it. And I thought the Cowboys would match the intensity and the will to win, that they would want it more, at least for one night, because all it is one game. At least for one night, they did not. Now, the only thing coming out of this game, left guard Aaron Banks left with a bicep injury. 49ers are cautiously optimistic that it is not of a season-ending variety. By the time you guys hear this podcast, there might be more information on that. Fingers crossed. John Feliciano came in and would be the starter if Banks misses any time, and he probably will miss time, even if it is something more minor, I could see him missing a couple games. Quarterback discussion time. Brock Purdy doubters. Are there any more out there? Should there be any more out there? Not in a vacuum. Not because of this one game where he threw 4 touchdown passes, completed 71% against a top 2 defense coming into this game. Feel like Russell Crowe in The Gladiator. Remember, he says, "Are you not entertained?" Doesn't matter if you're entertained or not. You should be, but you should be convinced. And if you are now, what took you so long? Why did you have to see this game? Purdy has won 11 straight regular season games now. Last night was the 11th. 10 before that, and 2 playoff games, and obviously got hurt in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. Second all-time regular season win streak to Ben Roethlisberger when he was a rookie. Got the Steelers, I believe, all the way to either the divisional round or the AFC Championship game and lost. So hopefully he's going to buck that trend. But Purdy is 13-1 overall. And you know the one loss, he didn't play. Or he didn't play, 55 minutes of that game. There is clear bias due to his draft position. There are still people waiting for when's the other shoe going to drop? When's it going to fall off? At this point, when do we get to say this is kind of who Purdy is? Not someone that's going to complete 71% every game. Like I said, bring it down, guys. Great to beat the Cowboys. Made my night. It's going to make my week. He's going to have off games. Said it. He's going to throw picks. We know this. They're going to lose a game. I don't think they're going undefeated. They're going to lose games, probably plural, and that's okay. Montana lost games. Young lost games. Let's go to other quarterbacks. Brady lost games. Elway lost games. It's okay. It's okay. It's going to happen. But that, again, a bad game or say 2 bad games in a row, or hell, even 3, does not negate or erase what he has done to this point. 13 wins in games and no losses in games that he has started and finished the majority of the game. And there certainly is clear bias due to his draft position. Because you know what? If Trey Lance had shown this in 8 games instead of 13, he would be crowned the next great 49er quarterback. Actually, let me backtrack that. In 6 games, he will be crowned the next great 49ers quarterback. Wait, you know what? In 4 games. If he had 4 games the way that Brock has had, pick any 4 of Brock's games. If Trey Lance had that at any point, say last season, he would have been anointed, key to the city, next great Niner quarterback, yada, yada, yada. And now here we're 14 games in, and there's still folks out there in the media still waiting for it to fall apart. And there's going to be rough patches. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be losses and picks and throws where you're going to say, Christ, how did he not see that linebacker or corner? Or what? It's going to happen. But instead, we have now like a Justin Fields type narrative. Justin Fields had 2 good games in a row. 4 touchdowns in his past 2 games, lost the Bronco game because of a fumble and an interception late that sealed it, and had a really good game against the Commanders, although the Commanders just decided not to play defense on any of their receivers at all. But now Justin Fields has turned the corner. 2 good games, turned the corner. Severe losing record. Justin Fields has maybe turned the corner, guys. Can he? It's not a black or white thing. And I want to just say that out there because I know Trey Lance, Justin Fields, people of color, Brock Purdy, white. I guess that would still be considered like racism against the Caucasian, right? You don't want to believe draft position matters. Lance went 3rd overall. Justin Fields a little bit later in that same draft. Following draft, Brock Purdy is the last overall pick. You can't tell me if Brock Purdy was a 1st-round pick or a top 10 or top 5 pick, people would be fawning all over him. Because the height thing, the size thing doesn't matter, right? Kyler Murray went number 1 overall to the Cardinals. Baker Mayfield went number 1 overall to the Browns. Same builds. Brock Purdy might be taller than Kyler Murray. Probably the same build as Baker Mayfield. But just they didn't come out of college with the hoopla. It's like in my profession, I'm in advertising. If you're an SVP, a senior vice president, and you're a creative director, your promotion is going to be to senior vice president, group creative director. Once you get that title, that acronym, it will never be taken away, unless you get fired, of course. If for an internal promotion or something externally, that's that initial hoopla, that initial hype. The SVP acronym to me in this correlate is the initial hype that carries with the person, deserve it or not. And I've worked with a lot of people that are morons at that position or at that level. Brock has to dig himself and work so much harder because he did not have the hype train coming out of Iowa State that Trevor Lawrence had, that Justin Fields had, that Trey Lance had to a certain extent, and Zach Wilson. And even Zach Wilson too now. Oh, Chiefs game, Broncos game played okay. Maybe he's turning the corner. Not saying he's getting more notoriety, but we human beings, people in the media, stop looking at stuff in a vacuum, and it's the total body of work. If we're supposed to be in a what have you done for me lately society, what Brock has done is won all 13 of his games he started and finished. Iowa State stuff doesn't mean anything. And it's a shame for any Purdy doubters out there. I'll leave you with this facetious note. I'm starting to feel like the Purdy doubters, and folks are coming around. I've been waiting for you for about a year. Well, actually, it can't be that long because Brock didn't start till midseason. Waiting on you for about 6 months at least, Purdy doubters. But it just goes to show that you have something in common with Trey Lance. You're slow intellectually and common sense wise, and your processing abilities in evaluating a quarterback and having common sense for your eyes to believe what you're seeing on the field from Brock is just as slow as Trey Lance's ability to process a defense on the field. But if you're on board now, awesome. Love to have you. But if you're folks on Twitter that I know are Trey Lance fans and, wanted him and hated Brock and da-da-da, I ain't going to let you forget about that. Maybe I'm immature, but I'm also right. Now let's conclude with things I loved to see this game. Loved seeing Jordan Mason get 10 carries. Loved it. 19 for McCaffrey, so still was at around that, that 20 mark that's going to end him with about 340 carries for the year. Debo had 5, and Ty Davis Price with 6. Good for him, a Ty Davis Price sighting. Love to see Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and most of the starting defense out for most of quarter number 4. Yeah, it was 42-10. If Shanahan left anyone of note in, it would have been a travesty. He had to on the offensive line because you have 5 starters and 3 backups. And Aaron Banks got hurt. Feliciano had to come in. So that means, or 3 backups active. That means it was Matt Pryor and Jalen Moore who came in to start. So you still had 2 starters that had to be out there. But you saw when Purdy came out, when McCaffrey came out, eventually Mason came out, the receivers rotated out. Great. I love to see rookie wide receiver Ronnie Bell down 2 punts inside the Dallas 10, one at the 5 and one at the 1. I believe he caught both on the fly. Awesome concentration. How many times do you see the gunner on the punt team get down there, lose the ball, or let it take a bounce because I want to stand at the goal line, and instead of catching at the 5, let me stand at the goal line and try to get as many yards and inches as I can close to the goal line. And what does it happen? They drop it, it bounces past them, and the ball comes out to the 20. Great job catching on the fly by Ronnie Bell. Even though I didn't see this, I'm just going to put this out as I loved thinking about the potential of owner Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, and media personality Skip Bayless, and all Dallas fans out there. The idea of you guys all eating a bag of dicks just brings a smile to my face. Love that phrase, bag of dicks. You know what? Because this is an instance where one dick just isn't enough. You got to have more than one dick in the bag to munch on. Enjoy that feast. And lastly, I love to see this, but I was confused by it. I was watching the post-game press conferences for both teams. Dak Prescott was answering questions at the podium in a hat that had a backwards D on it. Now, I don't know if that was for Dallas or for Dak or something else. I have no idea. And I'm watching this going, okay, if someone filming this, like, because when you see things on, say, a Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, Instagram, when someone's filming themselves, it's a mirror reflection. Like, because you could see if they're wearing a hat, the logo's backwards, numbers are backwards, etc. So I'm looking at the background behind Dak to see if any words are backwards because he's wearing a backwards D on his hat. Now, I don't it's just fitting for the game that he had, man. Like a backwards D. It's like, kids writing like Toys R Us and putting letters backwards and stuff. Like that was the equivalent of the Dak dunce cap. And I loved to see it. And by all accounts, Dak's a good guy. I'm not taking shots like that. But that had me curious and chuckling at the same time that after you got your doors blown off and you threw 3 picks, you're wearing a hat which looks like the letter D on it and it's backwards. Phenomenal. Now let's conclude at least this section by saying, what does this mean? Here's what it means, guys. It's just one game. It's just one game against a team I grew up hating. So that was awesome. But it's just one game. Now, as we roll into the rest of the week, don't worry about power rankings. And I'm sure the 49ers will probably be on the top of power rankings and media personalities are going to talk them up. And that's great, right? Like, when you're listening to media personalities, hopefully ones that you respect and not just folks that are just, empty-headed airheads just talking and giving their opinion. Feels good when teams that you like are thought of in high regard by others. But that was really cool to me when I was 10. Now I don't care. I'll draw my own opinions. You want to say nice things about the Niners or crap on somebody? Knock yourself out. Doesn't change my day. Doesn't change my opinion or my outlook on anything. Here's what else it means, why it doesn't mean really much. Because this is a week-to-week league. Remember everybody fawning over the Miami Dolphins when they scored 70 on the Broncos and won by 50? What happened next week? They went to Buffalo, lost by the Bills, got blown out. Then they play the hapless Giants yesterday, beat them by 15, which is still a decent margin, but they beat them by 15 and held the Giants without an offensive touchdown. Remember, the Giants' only touchdown was a 100-yard pick six that Tua threw. And I think they only wound up scoring, 31 points? Just still a lot. And they still ran for over 200 and Tua threw for over 300 or whatever. So then you have the Bills, who have the Dolphins come to town last week, fresh off their 70-point outburst on the Broncos. And the Bills put it on Miami. And now everyone's, the Bills might be the best team in the conference and da-da-da. And what happens? Buffalo is in London yesterday, loses to the Jaguars and really got worked in some respects. And I'll get to that later. It's one game. It's one win. It feels great. But as when you heard, if you watched the post-game interviews, it was with Purdy, Kittle, and Fred Warner. They all said, it's one game, we're on to Cleveland. Almost like a Bill Belichick approach to it. Enjoy it for 24 hours, rest and recoup, get that body ready, and it's on to Cleveland, who, in case you aren't aware, has the #1 defense in the NFL and are coming off of a bye. So they're going to be fresh. And we will dive into that on the podcast on Thursday. Great win. Hate Dallas. Love to see an ass kicking. But it's one win. 5-0 is awesome. On to the next one. And that concludes the 49ers section of the podcast for today. Stick around. Coming up, we're going to be talking the Miami Hurricanes college football blunder. And then we're going to go around the league every game, obviously except the Monday night game because I'm filming this before the Monday night game. And we're going to just talk about some things that jumped out at me from each game. So stay with us.
It's plus time.
All right, let's transition to college football before we get back into the NFL. If you are not aware, one of the stupidest things you will ever see in football or pro sports in general occurred during the Georgia Tech-Miami game in Miami on Saturday. This is a game that should not have been as close as it was at the end. Miami dominated Georgia Tech yards-wise, 453 to 250. First downs, 23 to 13. Miami had 11 minutes more time of possession, but they did turn it over 5 times to Georgia Tech's 2. But still, with Miami up 20 to 17, late in the fourth quarter, they had a 3rd down and 10 at the Georgia Tech 35-yard line with 36 seconds left. Georgia Tech had no timeouts. All Miami has to do is kneel, hike the ball and kneel, and the clock runs out. The college football play clock is 40 seconds. I think the pro play clock is 35. It wouldn't have mattered. If it was a pro game, quarterback just hikes it, steps back for a couple seconds, waits, and then kneels, and then the clock will run out. All they had to do. Instead, Miami hands it off to their running back, who, while fighting for yardage for some reason, fumbles. Georgia Tech recovers it at their own 25 with 26 seconds left. They wind up moving the ball to the Miami 44, so right around midfield, and with 10 seconds left, the quarterback rolls right and throws down the field to a wide receiver who gets behind the safeties, catches it for the win. I want to stress, this was not a Hail Mary. This was not everybody run into the end zone and the quarterback is going to throw it and see who comes down with it. It was an actual pattern. There was 4 receivers or 5 in the pattern. The quarterback rolled, and this one receiver got behind 3 or 4 Hurricanes who were chasing him. Catches it. They lose the game. 1 second left. There was a kickoff. Miami tried lateraling. It couldn't get anywhere. Game over. Lot of blame to go around. Watching pre-snap, we'll get back to the kneeling in a second because that's the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard of. But 10 seconds to go, no timeouts, and they could get into field goal range for the tie. So I can understand in a way why the corners weren't playing as deep as they could have. But the fact that you let someone get behind you, that's the kill shot. That's the only way you lose. It's what I stress to my kids playing flag football every week. The 3 safeties, or if we play 2 safeties, nobody behind you. Anybody starts running and comes into your area because we play a lot of zone, you follow them. I don't know if this receiver that caught it was a world-class sprinter. Still shouldn't happen. You could have played one deep center fielder at the goal line just to make sure. But as an aside, Hurricanes head coach Mario Cristobal obviously at the end of the game said, I should have stepped in and said, hey, just take a knee, when he heard the offensive coordinator called a run. Why is the offensive coordinator calling a run? Mario Cristobal has a history of doing just this when he was a coach at Oregon. I don't recall if he was the head coach or the offensive coordinator. Maybe it was both. I don't recall. But he has done this before, either at the end of the half or end of a game. Why? Why would you do it at all? Literally, the only thing that can happen, if you snap the ball on a kneel, you could fumble. It's a possibility. But you can't get tackled. You kneel, and the game is literally over. Literally over. And I hate to spread the blame around. So you got the defensive backfield. You have the defensive coordinator, which are at the bottom of this list. You have the head coach and the offensive coordinator at the top. And in the middle, what about the quarterback? If you're smart enough to play quarterback at any level, but obviously college is higher than high school, and you get that play call, you should say, fuck this, I'm going to kneel. not to put words in the quarterback's mouth, do you think that quarterback's going to get benched next week because he decided to kneel instead of handing it off? And you don't need to set up a certain formation to kneel. He just takes the snap and goes down. Game over. How about the running back? Kneel. This isn't even, there's been some games where, say, like a team is up by maybe 3 points, college or pro, and a running back gets to a receiver, and instead of scoring a touchdown, they'll go down at the 1 yard line because that'll kill the clock and preserve the victory. You don't see that many players do it because too many of these kids, and they are kids, young men, kids in college, are glory hounds. They want the glory. They want to be the man, yo. I don't care if your offensive coordinator called a run. Go down. And why are you fighting for extra yards? Just go down. The game's over. I can't excuse the head coach and the offensive coordinator are at the top of the goddamn list. But there is a lot more blame to go around at the University of Miami. And this may have, I don't know how good Miami is going to be, but that loss dropped them, I think, from 17, I think they were, to 25. So they're still in the top 25. But now potentially out of a national championship picture in one of the worst and dumbest losses that you could think of. It's a loss so dumb that morons on Twitter couldn't have invented it. And those are dumb. I mean, hell, Mario Cristobal and your offensive coordinator, take a page out of the Trey Lance fans on Twitter. They're on both knees in front of Lance. You just got to go down on one. Jesus, I just hate stupidity. I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. I think I'm a relatively smart guy, but God damn it, I hate stupidity. Now let's transition to the NFL. Let's start with the Thursday game, which is a good game from a point standpoint, but from a brand standpoint, garbage. The Bears beat the Commanders 40-20. Justin Fields, as I mentioned, had his second straight good game, 282 yards, 4 touchdowns. Sam Howell for the Commanders, 37 of 51, 388 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Justin Fields was, even with that yardage and touchdowns, a shade over 50%. He went 15 for 29. His touchdowns, specifically to DJ Moore, were wide open. It did not take a talented quarterback to make the throws that he made. And I think this year, right now, I feel better about Sam Howell as my quarterback, or as a quarterback, than I do about Justin Fields. This is Howell's second year in the league, but really his first season starting, and this is Fields' third season in the league with significantly more starting experience in the NFL. Is Justin Fields trade bait? They have right now, the Bears have the first 2 picks in the draft. And if Caleb Williams from USC comes out, you trade Justin Fields. You don't even think about it. You probably take Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver at Ohio State, and then just move on. They're not going to trade Justin Fields in season right now, but they should trade him at the end of the season. And there's going to be a glut of teams. So Justin Fields might get traded. Russell Wilson, if he can't straighten it out, might get traded. Kirk Cousins is going to need to go somewhere, and then you have quarterbacks coming out in the draft. Kyler Murray might get traded. It's going to be interesting where some of these QBs end up that could be on the hot seat or maybe 1 foot out the door. They all won't go somewhere. I mean, I think Kirk Cousins definitely will. He's a free agent. But wow, Justin Fields didn't turn the corner, guys. And he's going to be on his 4th year of his rookie deal. You might as well bring in if you're going to still suck with a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal for 4 years. Not with what you might have to pay Justin Fields to still suck. Because then that just means he becomes the Black Daniel Jones. The early game, Jacksonville and Buffalo from London. I think London, let's just say Europe. Jaguars win 25-20. Jaguars put on an offensive clinic, 474 yards on that vaunted Bills defense. Dominated first downs, 29-18. Time of possession, plus 16.5 minutes. Trevor Lawrence, 315 yards and 1 touchdown. Not to be outdone, the Jags ran the ball like madmen. 40 rushes for 196 yards, almost 5 yards a carry. The Bills, 14 rushes for 29 yards. This was a game that was 11-7 Jacksonville at the half. This wasn't a blowout that they had to claw back and throw. This is what happens when Buffalo becomes imbalanced or unbalanced, whatever the right way to say it is. 2 yards. Even though you're only 2 yards a carry, and they have, I think, 3 running backs. James Cook didn't have a good game. Nobody had a good game running the ball. Josh Allen didn't for them, but you got to commit to it. It can't just be the bombs away Josh Allen show. Yet they lost by 5, but they had to come back at the end. Jacksonville kind of made it a 2-score game with a late Travis Etienne touchdown run for the Jaguars. You have to be more balanced. Stop relying on Josh Allen so much. And I guess so much for the Bills being the best team in the AFC. Week to week, guys. I know you need something to talk about, media. Week to week, everyone chill out. The Falcons beat the Texans 21-19 in Atlanta. Atlanta, a rare offensive explosion, 447 yards. They win the first down battle 26-17, plus 11 time of possession. And Atlanta had 2 turnovers. Rookie quarterback CJ Stroud of the Texans, another good game, 249 yards and 1 touchdown. But who would have thought he would have been outdueled by Falcon quarterback Desmond Ridder, 329 yards, 1 touchdown. Both teams ran the ball for under 100 yards. Atlanta surprising 3-2, the Texans 2-3. The Lions put it to the Panthers 42-24. Jared Goff, 236 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Lions as a team, 30 rushes for 159 yards and 3 scores. And Bryce Young, not a bad performance for the rookie, 25 of 41, 247 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The Lions are 4-1 by themselves atop the NFC North, and with a Packer loss today will be if the Packers lose tonight, Monday Night Football against the Raiders, they will have a 3-game lead or 2.5 or 3-game lead on Green Bay. Indianapolis beat Tennessee 23-16. Rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson hurt his shoulder. We'll know the severity in a couple days. Gardner Minshew comes in 11 for 14, 155 yards. Jonathan Taylor, who was holding out, gets his contract, 3 years, $42 million. It's a $14 million a year average, and I think he got about $26 million guaranteed. So he should be back next week. And his replacement running back, Zach Moss, said, wait, hold my beer. I'm going to go 23 rushes for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns myself. So hopefully that means they have a nice 1-2 punch at running back. The Titans could not run the ball, 22 for 89 yards. Derrick Henry himself only had 43 yards. Miami and the Giants, I alluded to this a bit earlier. 31-16, Dolphins win it. Dolphins, again, the track meet was on display. Yards, 524 to 268. First downs, 22-15. Miami did have 3 turnovers, and the Giants did win the time of possession battle by 12 minutes, but it didn't matter because they couldn't score an offensive touchdown. Daniel Jones was sacked 6 times, hurt his neck. They only ran the ball, the Giants, 29 times for 85 yards. And for all Darren Waller at tight end had a nice game, but for all the local media touting all the weapons the Giants have now at receiver, Saquon, of course, who was hurt. Darren Waller, who finally had a decent game. Isaiah Hodgins and Paris Campbell being brought in. Darius Slayton, the rookie receiver out of Tennessee. Wan'Dale Robinson. Everybody just got so excited for some number 2s, but mainly a bunch of number 3 receivers, which goes to show how bad the Giants' skill positions outside of Saquon Barkley were last year that you get excited for this rabble. Giants are 1-4. They should rest Saquon this week against Buffalo. Coming off of a loss, I could just see Buffalo annihilating the Giants. No need for the Giants to risk further injury, especially if Daniel Jones is hurt with the neck and he's out. I don't want to hear, well, Jones is out, we definitely need Saquon. You're going to lose either way. Make sure Saquon is healthy, even if you're at 1-5. Look at all these teams. So let's just assume that the Cowboys and the Seahawks get the first 2 wild cards. There's 1 left. You're going to be battling with teams like the Packers, the Falcons, maybe the Saints, maybe the Rams, maybe the Commanders. These are not great teams that the Giants, if they can get on a little bit of a roll, can't get to maybe 8 wins and get a wild card spot. Because I think that number 3 wild card, that could be a 7, 8, or 9 win team. Get healthy first, Giants, and then try to get your shit together, please. I live in the Northeast. I sometimes watch your games. It's abysmal. Abysmal part 2 is the New Orleans Saints going to New England and shutting them out 34-0. Not a great game for either team statistically, but much worse for the Pats, obviously. Yards, 304 to 156 for the Saints. First down, 17-8 for the Saints. Time of possession, plus 19 minutes for New Orleans. And the Patriots had 3 turnovers. Mac Jones, quarterback extraordinaire, got benched for his second straight game after throwing 2 interceptions. He apparently is still QB1. Bailey Zappi is not going to get the start next week. So if you're keeping track at home, the last 2 games, the Patriots lost 38-3 at Dallas and 34-0 at home against the Saints. That's called progress. When you go from losing by 35 points to 34 points, arrow is pointing in the right direction, obviously, for the Patriots. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh wins 17-10. Turnovers and drop passes for the Ravens. They're gonna rue losing this one. 3 turnovers for Baltimore, only 1 for the Steelers. Lamar Jackson had 1 interception. He was sacked 4 times. Running the ball, again, Pittsburgh cannot. 30 rushes for 87 yards, but they stuck to trying. 30 rushes was important. Baltimore dropped a lot of passes, some touchdowns, and with 1:17 left, Kenny Pickett hit George Pickens for a 41-yard go-ahead touchdown. They added a field goal after that to beat the Ravens 17-10. Eagles and the Rams, close game at the half, 17-14 Philadelphia. Eagles add 2 field goals after that, and the Eagles just dominated yardage-wise, 454 to 249. First downs, 28-17. Time of possession, 16 minutes more. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver, returned for the Rams, 8 for 118, which took a bite into Puka Nakua's production, 7 for 71, although he did have a touchdown. The Rams only ran the ball 14 times for 54 yards. That is not going to cut it, obviously. Philadelphia, their normal 39 for 159 and a touchdown. Cincinnati might have turned a corner, beating the Cardinals 34-20. 3 turnovers for Arizona. Cincinnati only had 1. More or less the story of the game. First downs, 27-15 and 16.5-minute time of possession for the Bengals. Jamar Chase set a Cincinnati Bengals record with 15 receptions, went for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Bengals, again, with Joe Mixon and company, cannot get on track running the ball. 30 for 93, but good to see Joe Burrow get out of that healthy. The offense starting to click, and this was without T. Higgins, and that's because he's on my fantasy team, so of course he's not going to play and help me out. But maybe the Bengals have turned a little bit of a corner. The Jets go to Denver in the Nathaniel Hackett Bowl and win 31-21. Jets put up over 400 yards of total offense, had a 9-minute advantage in time of possession. Zach Wilson, not great, but not terrible. Competent. And that's what I've been saying for weeks. The Jets need competent quarterback play if their defense can keep playing at a really high level. Zach was 19 of 26, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, but no word yet on how many Denver moms he banged. Breece Hall, 22 rushes for 177 yards. As a team, the Jets ran 32 times for 234 yards. Russell Wilson, not a bad game. 20 of 31, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, but caught the ire of head coach Sean Payton as down by 3 points in the 4th, scrambling to his left instead of throwing it away. He could have either thrown it away or decided to tuck and run. He did neither, which is kind of in a scrambling ball out mode. Gets sacked, fumble, scoop, and score. Jets go up 10 and win it 31-21. And lastly, the Chiefs go to Minnesota, closer than I think many people thought, and a relatively even game. Chiefs 27, Minnesota 20. Mahomes and Kirk Cousins both were over 280 yards, both threw for 2 touchdowns. Both teams couldn't run the ball. Chiefs ran it 21 times for 67 yards and a score. Minnesota 18 times for 70 yards, so slightly better. And the Chiefs averted disaster when tight end Travis Kelce went out in the first half Looked like he tweaked his ankle, and the way he was grabbing it, you thought it might have been worse than it was. Comes back in, scores a touchdown, goes 10 for 67 yards and 1 score. And Justin Jefferson, to add insult to injury or add injury to another injury, has a hamstring injury. He's being reevaluated today. We will know more in the coming days. So that concludes the podcast for this week. It was all football all the time, mainly pro, but we had to give a tip of the cap to the Miami Hurricanes for an all-time what the hell were you thinking? Our next podcast will be on Thursday. We're going to go over any other additional housekeeping items from the big win over Dallas. We're going to preview the game at Cleveland. It's going to be a Sunday 1 o'clock Eastern game, and then we'll have plus section content to share as well. So for the next 3 days until we speak again, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.